have a successful presentation. Your presentation will be judged by 3 judges. I am the room monitor. I will be the timekeeper, and I will monitor the door to make sure no one enters the room during your presentation. I will start the timer when you start your presentation. The timer may beep at the 10-minute mark and also at the 5-minute mark. I will show you a 5-minute warning card and a 1-minute warning card.
That's what I want to listen.
That's these. 5-minute warning card, 1-minute warning card. Where am I here? I will stop your presentation when the 15-minute time period is up, even if you are not finished. I will then reset the timer for 5 minutes, which starts the question and answer period. I will show the 1-minute warning card and then stop the question and answer period when the time is up. After the question and answer period, quickly gather up your presented materials and exit the room so the next team, well, that doesn't apply, no next team. Let's see, save your materials in case you want to give your presentation at your school or in your community. And please be aware of the time after you leave this session, after you leave this room, and arrive for the judges' comment session at the campfire bowl at 11:15. The judges will meet you there to introduce themselves and provide feedback to all teams, followed by the award ceremony.
And actually, those are printed from previous years when we've had a 4th session, so the time to go down there is basically when you're finished here. So you're done around 10:45, so around 10:50, just head down that. It's right down the hill.
Start when ready.
Okay.
Alright, so hi, I'm Samantha Kennedy, and I just joined Forestry this year, so I was pretty excited to do this project.
I'm Anna Essling. This is my 2nd year doing forestry. I did it 2 years ago, and I just loved it so much, so I had to come back.
I'm Dylan Brownell, and this is my 1st year of forestry, and it's very fun.
And we are group 1.
Alright, so the Leoni Fuels Reduction Project. In 2000, a series of vicious forest fires kind of swept through the area in California, and it caused people to open their eyes, and they realized that they should reduce the amount of timber fuels in the forest because timber fuels that build up can lead to crown fires, which lead to massive forest fires, which can endanger communities and houses. So the National Fire Plan was established by the Forest Service to reduce the amount of hazardous fuel in fire-prone forests. And so the community of Grizzly Flats, because fires travel with the southwest winds, most of the time they come up the canyon, and the people in Grizzly Flat wanted to talk to the people in Leoni Meadows to sort of coordinate a fire break here in Leoni Meadows. So Leoni Meadows applied for and was awarded funding for a fuels reduction project on 77 acres. And the goals and purposes of the reduction project, all brush will be chipped, small trees will be hand-cut, limbs removed up to 12 feet, brush rake used to create piles, hand piling where equipment cannot access, piles burned as conditions permit, and controlled understory burning to maintain safe conditions. So the funds that were given by the RAC totaled $50,000, and the community, the Leoni Meadows community, contributed $20,000, which they obtained from selling different forest timber products and such. So it was a total of $70,000, which was to be dispersed over 77 acres, which comes out to $909 per acre. And it is more than enough money for any method of fuel reduction. You could use any of the 4 choices we were given. However, it would be nice to not maximize the $909 so there's money left over for the next time you need to burn such. So, as you can see there, it's a good demonstration, a good picture of how fires can travel up hills and they can go through canyons. And so they're hard to stop when they're going through canyons because when fires travel uphill, they heat up the brush up high because heat rises, so it can catch on fire easier. So when fires tear through the canyons, they're really hard to stop, and they're really dangerous because they burn hot and fast.
Okay, there are many treatments, but what really is the best treatment? And we decided there's no one solution to the problem because there are so many pros and cons to each of the methods, and there's so many different kinds of terrains we have to work with in Leoni Meadows. So we had to choose multiple for each area because you can't bring a masticator in on a cliff. It'll fall over. I mean, it just won't be economically efficient. So there are many factors we have to consider: the relative humidity, the seasons, the weather. For the burning, you can't burn in hot, sunny, windy days. The time and the money and geography. I mean, there's just a lot of factors. So mastication is the first one of the options we had, which is where large machines crawl along the forest floors, grinding up bushes and small trees. They usually go from the top of the tree like a pencil sharpener all the way down, and the tree is then reduced from a ladder fuel to more of a ground fuel, therefore preventing ground fires. It's faster. It can be done in the winter because the trees are out of the snow, so you can reach them. It can be followed by herbicides with manzanita bushes in case so they won't grow back because they are very prone to resprouting. It's very expensive and not accessible to steep slopes, and it costs $400 to $600 an acre, which is very expensive in some areas, but it might be the most economically efficient considering the time and amount of money that we have for that acre. We have slashing, which is where a crew hand cuts and chops branches from 12 feet down and chops down trees that are unnecessary, maybe some snags that don't need to be kept. It's cheaper. There's not much equipment required. It's accessible. People can get down into the valleys near the creeks and chop down the trees that they need to. But it's slow and very labor intensive. It takes a lot of strength and time to do because you do have to do it slowly to be safe. And it's only $100 per acre, which is very efficient considering the thing we have to work with. For tractor piling, a tractor pushes and slashes debris, pulls out uncut debris, and it pulls them out from the roots, so you usually don't have to worry about them growing back. And it's very efficient with manzanita bushes. You can push them, pull up the roots, clear an area on flat terrain, which is much more cost efficient than trying to hand slash a flat terrain. Why would you hand slash when you have a tractor? And it's only $200 to $300. Pile burning is you clean up the slashes, you light them on fire and watch them and monitor them as they're burned. It gets rid of the debris, so in mastication you could clean up the areas by setting a broadcast fire, which could help clean up so we wouldn't have to worry about the fuels in the ground fire. But it must be done in wet conditions, therefore the fire is not worrying about spreading or causing a wildfire if it does get out of control, and it's only $50 to $75 per acre. We have hand piling, which is where you hand pile each of them versus having a tractor push them into piles. It's easy to access. People can get down into small places, pick up any debris they need to, and move it to where it needs to go. It can get into any area you need to. In creek beds, you can remove the bed to keep the water sources cleaner. No machine tracks are left behind. You don't have to worry about smashing through trees or losing your machinery on a steep slope. It's not subjective to weather. You can do it in the rain or the snow. It's labor intensive though. You do have to worry about, if you're small you can get hurt, there's lots of dangers about it, but it is time consuming and very costly considering you have to pay each worker at least minimum wage for hours, and it takes a while. It's about $350 to $500 per acre. Alright, so basically what we were thinking was to divide Leoni Meadows up into the various areas so that we could put together a cost-effective plan for each individual area. Leoni Meadows, as we know, has various slopes, and there's of course the meadows themselves, there's various canyons, and so certain treatments are only going to be available for certain areas. We were thinking more hand piling down in the valleys and the ridges right near the streams. We would have to burn those later, like a slashing method, and then mastication and tractor piling would probably be used more on the flatter areas where it's easy to access and for heavy equipment. But as you can see, we have already started to protecting Leoni Meadows.
Alright, so areas 3 years ago, we started with mastication. There's still slash left. It hasn't been burned yet. So what we need to do is we need to go through, broadcast burn that so that through the slash we don't start getting more of the stuff that we just masticated, more of the shrubs, and then plants are going to grow back again. So we don't want the mastication to act as a mulch for more ground fuels. We want to get rid of that, broadcast burn through there. But Leoni Meadows is trying to wait for the adjacent areas to burn so that we can do more of a mass burning, so we can burn through all at once instead of doing it one at a time, which is going to cost more, it's going to take longer, and it could be more of a danger to the surrounding communities. So after burning, hopefully it will resemble the area that was treated 7 years ago, which is in our next slide. So this is the area that was 7 years ago. It's a little bit clearer. We still have some slash on the ground and some stuff is returning, as you can see in the background here. But what we really want to do is we want to go, 7 years ago was both bulldozer and hand piled. So, and then it was followed by burning. And after 7 years, this is pretty good conditions for 7 years ago. This was cleared up. So the conditions are still very good, and there's minimal lateral fuels, and so we just want to make sure that we maintain this and continue to promote a clearer forest and less fuels. Alright, so the re-entry plan. Both areas, both Site 1 and Site 2, and as well as the areas that we've already started on, our 3 years, our 6 years, and our 7 years along here. We want to make sure we maintain this, but all the areas would have to follow a similar management plan with probably a rotation consisting of, we want annual inspections and based on what has already been happening, how we've already maintained the land. Alright, so over the years we want to take into account our observation areas that would be best treated about every 5 to 7 years, we're thinking, because we think that the 7 years is, while it was well done, we want to make sure we maintain that and reduce the fuels before it becomes a danger once more. So the treatment method would consist of tractor piling and mastication in the flatter areas, as I've already said, and then more hand piling and manual labor in some of the valleys that are harder to reach. Alright, so in Site 2, where we were working on this past week, so the areas have been slashed and hand piled due to the steepness of the slopes, and the surrounding trees make it difficult to get the machinery in. So the faster area, or some of the flatter areas should be bulldozed and masticated and then in the more steeper areas, less suited for heavy machinery, we need to focus more on our handwork and continue with the piling and make sure we go through and burn those before it gets to be winter and the stream starts coming up again. So, continue. Alright, so other areas of the Leoni staff should focus on for future projects and the places most strategic to reduce the threat of wildfire. Alright, so in Site 1, it was considered an issue, but it was more secondary to Site 2. Issues here include the dense tree foliage and the underlying brush. In Site 2, we have very steep slopes and high percentages of ladder fuels. The south-facing slopes are much drier and provide much more of a fire danger, so we really need to keep an eye on that, continue with inspections. The southern areas need to be protected from the very dense vegetation south of the Leoni property, because on the Leoni property, just south of the border, there's hugely dense forests that we need to prevent fire from sweeping up from the south due to the prevailing winds. So we want to limit the fire spread and provide a protected border with some strategic fire breaks. So we want to focus our efforts to reduce fuels and protect the community by having a survey identifying areas that would be most susceptible to fire, creating fire breaks surrounding the high priority buildings, and focusing individually on residential areas of high density population. And the south should be protected in part by the Consumnes River, so it's less of a worry. Alright, where should the Forest Service focus their efforts? So measures have already been taken under the last chance projects, but we should already maintain the treated locations and continue the shaded fuel break that wraps around the Forest Service property. So this fuel break right here, we want to continue to maintain that, as well as maybe add in a bit more down here to protect it from the prevailing winds. Alright, more steps should be taken in the southwest to minimize the prospective damages from the prevailing winds, aligning with protected barriers and staggered fire breaks, as well as reducing fuels in the canyon areas to prevent a rapid funneling and channeling of the fire to other areas. Alright, in conclusion, the Leoni Meadows and the Forest Service must work together to accomplish the similar goals and make the area fire safe.
And we got some great sources from some of the wonderful people around Leoni Meadows, and we just wanted to thank them. Chris Pappas, he helped us, took us on an adventure and showed us how they actually did the tractor piling. We had Dave Deely, forester, so he helped us learn all our different tree species, different pests, and all about the fire and which ways the winds do blow. Kevin Conway, he was an actual forester, and he helped us learn about different kinds of methods that they do use for preventing fires. Rob Fecco told us about the RAC. He's from Sierra Pacific Forestry, and Steve Hunkner from Grizzly Flats Fire Safety. He did an entire speech that we got to learn a lot of neat things from about different methods.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good luck, you guys.
Thank you so much.
Good luck. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Don't leave yet, we have some
No,
questions.
we get 5 minutes. Okay, the one I've got is on the impact of doing your, reducing the fuels, how it's gonna impact on the wildlife. And in terms of impact and also on timing of your plans.
We plan on doing them around 2 years apart from each burning, so that way the growth of the forest, different areas will be at different levels, because we know the animals do need their regrowth, and in the wild, they do naturally cycle through forest fires, so if we try and space them about as often as natural forest fires occur, hopefully the different growths in the different area will be able to provide an adequate wildlife foundation for each animal.
Okay, how do you plan on timing it during the year though?
During the year,
We'd want to wait till the more wetter months, perhaps towards the end of fall, maybe in the beginning of winter, so that we can prevent wildfires from occurring from controlled burnings.
I'm talking in terms of the wildlife.
Well, that's a tough question to balance, because there's the safety of the community and the people who do not want all of the ladder fuels to make forest fires to burn into their houses and communities, but at the same time you don't want to just completely burn the forest floor and kill all of the wildlife. So to balance that, you would want to do it when it has, at the season when it has the least ecological impact, which, as you guys were saying, would be to pile the piles, and because broadcast burning has a bigger ecological effect, correct?
Perhaps what we're trying to say is that we want to use different types of burning. So in the summer, when it might be harder to control a fire, our fires are going to have to be smaller, maybe just hand-piled and not broadcast burning. We're going to have to do very controlled and limited burning in the summer so that we don't lose control of it. And then in the wetter months where it's easier to manage, we can do more broadcast burning, maybe through more complete areas rather than.
Wouldn't you want to do the burning like say in winter or early spring so you avoid the mating and nesting time?
Yes.
I believe what we should do is masticate a certain area and let that sit over the summer so the wood can dry, while another area is rebuilding the growth for the wildlife to continue in, and then we can cycle through the different areas like they do with grazing pastures for cattle. Everything can regrow, while the other one's getting ready to be prepared for a fire break.
Okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
What do you say to the environmentalists who say that anything you do in the forest is destructive?
Well, we're going to have to say that by just letting it continue to grow and stopping all the ground fires is not letting it occur naturally as the environment would, because as Anna said earlier, there are many fires that occur naturally throughout the forest from the dry seasons and other things.
Lightning storms and the humidity.
Exactly. So fires do occur naturally, and what the environmentalists are doing is they are stamping out all the fires and overrunning the environment with too much of a population, and so there's going to be
Dry
When the
lateral
fire does
fuels.
happen, it's going to be
Ground
so
fires.
destructive that it's going to kill hundreds of
trees. If it gets to a crown fire, it'll burn all the mature trees, which are a staple ecosystem for a lot of our animals around here, such as owls, and larger birds need larger places to look down upon around the meadow for their aerial views of the rodents.
So if the environmentalists would be a little bit more reasonable and would be willing to work with the Forestry Service on trying to protect the environment, they
We
could
would
work
be
out a
willing to
good
work
deal.
together.
Can you distinguish the objectives that maybe the Forest Service might have for what they're gonna do in their land versus what Grizzly Flats wants to do in Leoni Meadows?
The Forest Service hasn't really cleared any of their land. They're trying to please the law versus pleasing the people. So they haven't really done anything. We just noticed that their land wasn't cleaned and they weren't planning on cleaning any of it recently. But some of their other lands were completely burned and cleared, so.
There was a little bit of a struggle because the Leoni Meadow people could protect their land, but at the same time, the forest right next to it on the edge of the property, if nothing's going to be done to it because the forest department owns it, it's tough to coordinate if no one's going to work together.
And it's going to cause a huge danger,
Yeah.
huge potential danger for Leoni Meadows.
Have you found, are those three groups working together, or do you think they're not
I think
working
they all have
together?
different
trying
objectives.
to, but I think they're
They
trying to
have different
coordinate.
goals in mind.
I feel like if we all work towards a common goal of trying to protect the community and the ecosystem, perhaps we could all come to an agreement, but right now I think we all have different.
We're too
objectives.
disorganized and we haven't coordinated properly yet. We need to sit down.
5 minutes is up.
Thank you very much, you guys. Good
Thank
luck.
you. Thank you so much.
Oh, you know what? I want to get a picture of you guys with the